Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ruchin Goyal, Managing Director, Senior Partner at the Boston Consulting Group, and I have the privilege of being the moderator for the last session for FIBAC 2022. It's been a great 2 days, and we hope to end it on a high. The topic of our discussion is MSME Finance, and as many of you are bankers here, you will know that MSME Finance is really the holy grail of banking. It's one of the most difficult and challenging segments to lend to, but also the most important segment if it comes to the whole economy, right? And we have a really distinguished panel today to be discussing this topic. What I'll do is I'll only take 5 minutes to set the context for our discussion, and then we'll jump right in, and we'll try and have last 10-15 minutes for all of you to ask any questions if you have. Now, despite the focus that MSME has gotten from the government, from the regulators over many years now, this sector remains quite underpenetrated when it comes to formal credit. It's always grown slower than retail credit. Like over the last 5 years, if you see, the growth in MSME has been significantly slower than retail. And the challenges are well known. MSMEs are spread out, so it's difficult to reach out to them, and the cost to serve is high. The data that they provide to banks and BFCs is not very reliable, and hence the entire segment as a whole has very high NPLs, right? So it's difficult to make money. And we estimate that of about 60 odd million MSMEs in India, less than 1/3 have access to formal credits. And what you'll see on the rightmost side of the chart is that when we did a survey for FIBAC 2022, MSMEs said that only 1/3 of the money that they invest in the business comes from formal sector. The rest comes from informal sectors. However, we are in the midst of really rapid changes in the whole economy, but also the MSME sector. This sector that was in the past completely unorganized is getting more and more formalized. Whether it is the number of MSMEs that are now having GST registrations, about 15 million, the number of MSMEs that are now having QR codes, where they accept digital payments and not cash payments, around 20 million MSMEs. And as a result, if you see on the bottom, we forecast that in the near future, the total payments to MSMEs will surpass the cash payments, will no longer remain the dominant payments. The digital payments will surpass cash payments, and we did a report recently, and we said cash will no longer be the king when it comes to MSME, right? And what you see on the right-hand side, it is not just that many of them or almost all of them have a bank account. These bank accounts are seeing a large number of transactions. So the number of transactions per bank account almost doubled in the last 5 years, and we forecast that it will grow almost 8 times going forward. Now what this does is, it gives a lot of rich data to the bankers, to the NBFCs, to be able to do underwriting in a very different way from what they've been doing in the past. So the past way of underwriting was using P&L balance sheet, really a balance sheet based lending, to try and now have flow based information. And can they start using more flow based information to have a different kind of underwriting. Along with these changes, we are also witnessing at scale digital infrastructure being created in India and a lot of digital ecosystem. And if I just take 1 or 2 examples here, account aggregator and OCEN can really be the game changer. What UPI did to payments, can the combination of AA and OCEN do to MSME lending in the space, along with several other ecosystems that are being built. However, when we did a survey of MSMEs today on the ground, right, what has been their experience? Vast majority of them, in fact 70% actually said that they do not prefer applying online for loans. And when we asked the question why, they said the process still is quite cumbersome. Banks and NBFCs still ask for a lot of documents, right? And there's a lot of friction and pain point in the entire journey. So despite all the changes happening in terms of infrastructure, the on-ground experience today is far from desirable, right? And when we asked the question, what would it take for you to switch? They said flexibility is the most important thing that they would look for when it comes to financing. They need, their business is quite nimble and agile, and they need that flexibility from the financiers. And hence, this panel discussion will discuss a set of questions. Is India really ready? Are we at a tipping point? And would we see rapid innovation in the MSME sector the way we've seen both on payments and retail lending? So I'll stop my presentation here. So Mr. Ramann, maybe I'll start from you. So SIDBI has been, at the forefront of promoting access to credit to MSME. One of the big pain points, that bankers and NBFCs always have is on KYC. And the question is, can the whole Udyam registration, solve the pain point for the whole industry? And, your thoughts on what has happened so far and what can we expect going forward?
So good evening to all of you, and thank IBA and Vicky for having me here. I think the question of KYC is probably not that critical. There is obviously a well-established way of KYC for non-individuals, but if we look at the entire MSME segment, over 99% of all entities which today enumerate to over 9 crore, because on a well-established figure of 6.33 crores, we have now got a large number of retail units which have also got classified as MSME. So that number is probably, anyone's guess. So I'm saying, say roughly 9 crores. So in this, something like 98 or 99% is proprietorship. And therefore, one of the big problems we are trying to solve, and frankly, we have moved a very long way, and it's now getting operationalized with the MSME ministry, is to try and get as many of this 9 crore number to get an Udyam registration. From a banker's point of view, it is critical for the fact that with an Udyam registration alone can it get classified as a priority sector loan. So that is again, simultaneously something which can get solved for. The aim is to try and utilize Udyam once that registration number happens. So that's going to be a digital pull with the help of all the banks and the MFIs, where KYC of proprietorships is probably exceeding something like 4 or 5 crores. And there are other pools of data which are already established with clean data. So the aim is to try and get them even without a PAN, get whatever KYC number that exists with these regulated entities, and complete the Udyam number registration. This is what the ministry has finally agreed and signed off. So that work is already moving forward. And of course, the final goal is that under that clause 28 of the RBI Master Directions, a proprietorship, as distinguished from the individual, the proprietorship could end up completing the KYC with a digital validation by Udyam registration being one of the registration certificates. So that is really where, we intend to push and try and make it happen. So I don't know whether that's, I've made myself clear on that point, but really Udyam for me is, and I hope to, try and convince with the help of IBA and other people that should become the registration for a business in the country. And therefore that single registration should make good for the need of KYC. Then of course a host of other benefits that Udyam could probably give.
Thank you, Mr. Ramann. Really look forward to seeing this as the light of the day. So moving on, Mr. Mahabaleshwara, you've been a long-time banker, and you've seen the whole evolution of, lending to MSME. So what has been your experience of, using some of the new age ways of lending to MSMEs, some of the cash flow data, how, you think it has benefited your institution or the customers?
Thank you, Ruchin. I think in your opening remarks itself, you have provided the right direction in the sense MSME finance itself is very challenging, especially for the bankers, because of the lot of complexity is involved in that. The beauty of Indian bankers is that wherever there is challenge, there is bankers, because they treat it as an opportunity. That is the beauty of the Indian bankers, without any exception. And yes, about 2 years back or 3 years back, digital was good. But all of you would agree with me that today digital is a must. You don't have any other option. If you are still weighing whether it is physical or digital, I think we are treated as about 10 years back, not ahead. That is the reality today. Secondly, MSME as such, it's an abundant opportunity. Especially we bankers, we look for diversity, diversified sectors and all. And the regional imbalances, if at all there is one instrument which could minimize that, it is MSME. Whether we have our presence either in the metro or in the rural or in semi-urban or whichever area. So there is abundant scope. Now, having said that, it is not that easy to digitalize the loan underwriting process in MSME. In fact, in my bank, Karnataka Bank, we started this digital underwriting about 3 years back. We started this process especially to begin with the car loans, then the home loans, because that is the easiest one. But when I told my team to go for digital underwriting in the MSME, they were really excited. But a lot of challenges were there. It is not that one jacket will fit into all. So what they did is clearly understanding, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Ramann, we took KYC as the basis. Thereafter, the whole set of underwriting was totally redesigned. We started looking into the MSME finance not from the banker's angle, but from the customer's angle, the end beneficiaries. See, there are requirement of small loans, 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs and all. And there, if you insist for the balance sheet related things and if your approach is like that, you will never be able to meet the customer's requirement. And what we did is we came out with a different, a new type of product. I called it as KBL Micro Mitra. Up to 10 lakhs, the assessment itself, the business rule engine itself is totally different. Then we came out with another loan up to 50 lakhs. We called it as business quick loan. Above 50 lakhs, yes, you need all this traditional, whatever that balance sheet assessment and all such things. The essence of the story, the moral of the story that we learned during this entire digital journey is that we need to be flexible. We need to understand the requirement of the clients rather than banking requirement. Then only the digital will be successful. And as a result, even today, a bank like Karnataka Bank, wherein we have a lot of legacy issues. Next year is my centenary year, which I was sharing with Mr. Sunil Mehtaji also. And you could just imagine what are the legacy issues a bank, 100 years old bank would have. But I'm happy to share with you that as of today, on day-to-day basis, the sanctions that we are making under MSME, earlier it was always in terms of months and days. Now it is only minutes and hours. That is the power of technology. I myself have experienced, and this, not only this, about 75% of my daily MSME sanctions as of now are happening under digital platform. And this is all happened since last 6 to 9 months. Our digital center of excellence, what we started at Bengaluru, of course, our Ruchin and their team, BCG, were our transformation partners also. Even they left us. We didn't leave whatever that lessons that we have learned from the transformation. My team is continuing with that. It's an excellent journey, a rewarding journey. So that is why I said digital is no more an option. And without digital, I don't think we will be relevant in the years to come. That is, yes, challenges are there. You were referring to the challenges. We should have an open mind to understand what is happening at the field. But one thing, especially we have been immensely benefited by the fintechs, like Mr. Srikanth's Perfios and all such things. I have already tied up with about 15 plus fintech companies, because had I gone for my own solutions, I think I would have required minimum 10 years. And that is the power of these fintechs and all. We should have definitely a cooperative sort of and collaborative sort of approach. One area where I feel that, especially in the credit monitoring, the fintechs are yet to come out with an appropriate solution. Sanctioning, up to sanctioning and even up to documentation, yes, they are having ready-made solutions. But for credit monitoring, definitely we need some more solutions. In many forums also, I have echoed these sentiments of the bankers. If that is there, end-to-end this credit sanction and also recovery, that journey, if it is there, definitely it is exciting and also rewarding. Thank you.
So very good to hear your journey, Mr. Mahabaleshwara. So Srikanth, I'll just So Mahabaleshwara referred to the power of fintech, so I'll come to you. We've been hearing about account aggregators and the power that AAs can have to disrupt the entire ecosystem. But sometimes in the short term, hype kind of can exceed the reality. Is that the case with AA, that you've been hearing about it, but not much is happening, or you would have a different story out there?
Thanks, Ruchin. Thanks for having me here, and thank you, sir, for those kind words. Before I come to the where we are and what we're doing, I think it's important to remind ourselves about why AA as a framework exists. What problem are we trying to solve, and for whom, right? I think the first and the most primary set of customers is the data principle. People like you and me who have lots of data lying in various different places, but we struggle to put it into one place, forget making use of it. If I were to simply ask you a simple question, what is the total balance across all your bank accounts and securities and your insurance cover? Can you press a button today and find out? Answer is probably not. Right? Forget people in the room who are, in a privileged set, but the fact is that a lot of these SMEs or retail borrowers today are very data rich because of all the data that you shared, QR codes, GSTN, digitization. They have a lot of data. Question is, how do they monetize it for themselves? I mean, the fact is that in a lot of internet businesses, the business monetizes the data rather than the data principle, right? So we're trying to change that equation on saying, how do you put the data principle in charge of our own data and help her to monetize it, right? So we're trying to solve two fundamental problems. One, this huge friction in making use of my own data. Why should it be so difficult for me to share my data? Second, from a lender's perspective specifically, since this is a more of a lending forum, your digitization efforts are as good or not as the quality of data coming in, right? You can invest no matter what you want in terms of sophisticated systems, technology stacks, but if your incoming data is either full of friction or not guaranteed or not authentic, or you can't put your hand on heart and think this is authentic data, then chances are your efforts are going to be only halfway. Right? So, in terms of times and timelines and where we are, as you're aware, the RBI published the guidelines in 2016. For some time, there was a lot of figuring out, how do we get this operationalized and all that stuff, because it needed a set of specifications. You needed a certain set of APIs that was standardized and interoperable. So, encouragingly, the RBI stepped up. There is a unit called Rebit, which is their IT arm, which actually came up and actually specified specifications. I mean, personally, I've been in technology and finance for over 2 decades. I've never found a regulator actually coming up to that level and helping industry get off its feet. Right? So where we are today is, after a lot of effort, and you understand this is a two-sided network. There are providers of data, that is where you and I have a bank account or a mutual fund or an insurance policy. And there are users of data, let's say a lender or a FIU, who seek that data from you with your consent in order to arrive at a data-led decision. Maybe it's lending, maybe it's credit monitoring. So in the parlance, there are FIPs, providers of data. There are FIUs, which are the users of data. Today where we are is there are 25 FIPs live on the network. There are almost 100 FIUs who are transacting on the network. As a result, what we now have is over 1 billion bank accounts. I want to stress the word billion. I can't stress it enough. Over 1 billion bank accounts today are discoverable, which means that using your mobile number, you can figure out whether your bank account is enabled and link it to your AA ID. Right? This week, we are hoping 3 insurance companies go live as an FIP, which means that, again, if your mobile number is linked to your insurance policy, you can discover that and link it to your bank, to your AA account. GSTN has been in the works for some time. It's no longer a question of whether they should participate. It's the how and what the mechanisms. It is a slightly complex process, but we're getting there. We're into the specification, design, and stuff like that. You must have seen the securities industry also go live. The SEBI issued very detailed guidelines. So I think this time, 3 months from now, you'll find that about 200 or 300 million additional accounts or additional data points are going to join the network. So you're sitting on a network which will potentially link 1.5 billion unique data points, right? At the click of a button, straight from the source, completely authentic, and with consent, right? Now, the traction has been a little while coming, honestly. Right? This time last month, we were doing tens of thousands of transactions a week. This week, we're doing tens of thousands of transactions a day. Right? And you made that, you alluded to UPI. I mean, this feels like the 2016 of UPI. I'm sure you were there when Nandan did that launch, I think, in Bangalore, right? I mean, people didn't get it at that time. You know, how transformational it could be to have a virtualized payment address and authentication. To me, it seems like we're in the 2016 of UPI. Right? So where we are, we feel good about, the supply side of data. There is enough data now discoverable on the network that you can start building use cases for. My conversations personally with my clients are now shifting to what kind of new products, new experiences can you create for your customers? How do you delight them with unimaginable? I mean, the question I ask all my clients is, can you underwrite risk in such a granular fashion that Ruchin, with applying for a personal loan, gets 50 basis points lower than I do because you're more credit worthy, right? Why should everybody pay the same interest rate for the same product? Early days, what we're seeing is the early adoption is coming from retail lending. SME lending is kind of cooking a little bit. We're waiting for GSTN to come up. PFM is an obvious use case. In one of the earlier panels, we heard somebody from Paytm saying that the biggest use case on their app is people checking their bank account balance 10 times a day, right? So that happens to be a very interesting use case. And Mr. Mahabaleshwara, we will come back to you with a very strong solution for credit monitoring. What happens after, right? I mean, there's a lot of effort in onboarding, decisioning, but unless we complete the loop, I think we're missing a big opportunity. So, bit of a monologue. I mean, you can see that we're all very passionate about this, but we feel good about where we are. But lots of work ahead. I mean, it's just, day one, not even day one.
Thank you, Srikanth. I think the numbers that, we can take away from that long monologue was, 1.5 billion transactions at a click of a button. I mean, that is, are we in 2016 of what UPI was? Hopefully that's the way forward. If I can come to you, Rakesh, you've been, again, a seasoned banker, serving SME segment for a long time. You've seen a lot of, innovation on digital. How do you see the entire digital journey? Because on one side, MSMEs are very, they're very cash-driven, very physical business, right? Do you see a good uptake? What do you mean you're learning that you can share with this panel?
So, thanks, Ruchin. Our experience has been that on the MSME side, wherever there is a transaction, there's a trade, that's easier to do, and we do that on a click of a button in terms of, because we have built the scorecards over a period of time. We started this journey in 2016, started building it, but we are nowhere closer to what we do it on the consumer side. Consumer side has developed quite a lot. If you look at, because of Aadhaar, KYC is so simple. And because of the bureau, the consumer bureau is so rich now, and you are able to underwrite the consumers and consumer loans in a click of a button because you have built scorecards over a period of time, and the performance again gets back to the scorecards. On the MSME side, the challenges, the financials, and how do you really get it. But things are improving. As I mentioned, we can do underwriting for wherever there is a transaction. So a merchant loan, where there is a receivable coming in, we know it and we understand that very well. So what we have also done is we have tapped into different SME ecosystems. So we have partnered with many ecosystems where we can really reach out and provide the solutions on the moment of truth for the MSMEs. And this, in my view, will evolve over a period of time, and I'm seeing that happening. What has happened to UPI and Aadhaar in the last 4 or 5 years, I'm seeing that coming for MSME as well. With ONDC which is coming in. There will be a democratization of data. Earlier, all this data was more closed architecture and it's not available to everyone. It will be an open architecture where, like Srikanth was mentioning, there's so much of data, so much of information. How do you really convert that into your own scorecards depending on what segment you're serving and what kind of solutions you're providing? So this entire infrastructure which is being built on the MSME side by the government, if you look at whether OCEN is there, GEM is there, where already close to 5 million registration is there. And how do we really build the data and the data history of these customers? And once we have a rich data history of the customer, it will be very easy for bankers like us or lenders like us to really go and underwrite the customer on a click of a button, because that's what we have done for consumer loans and consumer segment. Similarly, we want to replicate it. So we have come some distance from where we were. So wherever we have a transactional history, where we see receivables, where there is a trade, where there is an invoice discounting, bill discounting, that can be done immediately. And we do it in minutes, all those financing. But in terms of if I have to assess a MSME on a working capital, or if I have to assess a MSME for their term loans or their capex needs, a lot more goes into the assessment of that and there. But also the GST, and now linkage to GST, we know what the turnover of the company is. And all of that data information we are plugging in terms of underwriting these smaller business owners and all. But as I said, we have only somewhere midway in this. I think we have a long journey to cover. Also, Commercial Bureau is now getting strengthened. Commercial Bureau, and if you look at, there are a lot of bureau companies, they are not only looking at only on the individual side, but also on the entity side, the business performance side. And they are building scores which is more holistic, 360-degree in terms of, and those scorecards can be really used as an along with the alternate data sources and underwrite these customers. And as Srikanth was mentioning, and clear differentiation in terms of how do you price these MSMEs, depending on the risk grades which you have. So there are credit bureaus who have different risk grades for these MSMEs. So depending on taking that input, building your own scorecards and different other information which will be available from these platforms which the government is really investing in, I think we can underwrite this segment quite well going forward.
Thanks, Rakesh. And so I'll come to you, Neeraj. As a natural extension to what Rakesh is talking about. We've seen the maturity of the retail bureaus in India. One of the bedrocks of why consumer lending is where it is. What has been the evolution of the commercial bureau? If you can just share, and are we at an inflection point also in the commercial bureau?
Yeah, I totally agree to all the speakers who've just spoken about various life cycle and evolution. Few of the things and which I picked up was that data is available. It is getting far more structured in the sense, far more consented in that framework. The second level of challenges which are coming in terms of how do you assimilate that, convert that into a meaningful insights, whether for decision making or for review mechanism or evolving various outcomes out of that data. So that's where bureaus come in the picture, right? And we've seen the importance of the bureau, the data, the insights which we keep bringing to the table. MSME and commercial bureau in that sense has come a long way in that sense. And with the paradigms which is getting changed now over last few years, saying that technology enabled decision making is going to be the way forward, right? And in that sense, importance of the data getting converted into a score, getting converted into bandings, as Rakesh was saying, risk ranking. To Mr. Mahabaleshwara's earlier point, we do a lot of analysis on the behavioral pattern of the consumers. So commercial is really building up in a big way. And as you said that 1/3 is only right now in a formal sector. So I feel this is the opportunity for the economy to say that financial inclusion in true sense is going to take off from here on the MSME side. So that's a huge area, and data converting into information, and like Srikanth was also saying that there are multiple information available. We are in this business of converting that information into valuable insights. So we need to integrate all these channels to say that how do we make the experience of the client seamless, and in the process provide him products and services which we are supposed to deliver to them at fingertip.
Thanks, Neeraj. Sundeep, if I can come to you, one of the innovations in the MSME segment has been Threads, and we've really seen how the platform has taken off. If you can just share, how Threads has been able to address some of the challenges that I just mentioned in the MSME financing, and what scale has it already reached, and what are some of the things that we can expect going forward on the Threads platform?
Sure. Thanks, Ruchin. In fact, when you were presenting, I was thinking these are the reasons why we exist as Threads. Lack of documentation of the MSMEs, the cost of financing, they're spread out across India, NPAs that the banks are going through, and so I was, all the while I was thinking, I said, that's why Threads is all about. And digital, like Mr. Mahabaleshwara was saying, I mean, we were born in a digital avatar only. And in 2020, March 2020, when the corona had just hit in that year, the Threads platforms had done about 18,000 crore worth of financing. And now in 23 is yet to finish. The Threads will be doing about 1 lakh crore worth of business. So this is the 2-year journey of Threads in this country, and SMEs are logging in from 1,200 cities digitally, and using a mobile phone, they are getting the invoice discounted. So when I had started Threads on as M1 Exchange, I never thought that I will be servicing SMEs in 1,200 cities. I could never dream of that. But maybe the product has, over a period of time, has been simplified so much that using the mobile phone and imagining a micro enterprise realizing what is bill discounting and can I get it done on a mobile, it has reached that kind of simplicity. And like one of the points in your presentation was that the cost of serving an MSME is very high unless it is digital for a bank. And here the cost of doing business for a bank is one-man army. Most of the banks, I mean, if we are doing 6,000 crore in a month, each bank is at least occupying 10% market share, let's say 600 crore. That 600 crore worth of invoice discounting is being done by 1 or 2% team in the entire country for one bank. So that's the cost of doing business for a bank on digital, on Threads. And that's why the pricing, and because it is PSL, that's why the pricing is very reasonable for an MSME versus if he's taking a discounting or a loan on his own balance sheet. Here the pricing is now with the revised rates because of the repo rates etc. have gone up. The pricing is ranging between 6.5% and going up to 10% per annum, right? So the whole game is very different now with this digital journey that we have experienced in India.
Thank you.
Ruchin, I have a small add-on here.
Please.
See, as a banker, when I sit here, it's very nice to have a lot of takeaways from this panel itself, either when Ramann spoke or Neeraj gave his opinion or even Srikanth or Sundeep. Look at the umpteen number of enablers for the banking decision today. Earlier it was not there. I think all of you would agree with me. That is the thing which we will have to acquire. Earlier we were all discussing about DD, demand draft. Now the DD new definition is data and digital. That is how we have to learn so many things. And we need not be overburdened whenever we are taking the credit decisions and all. When we have this many number of enablers, so only thing is if we have that right solution, digital solution is there, definitely it will happen. That is the one of the biggest takeaways for the bankers like me.
Thank you, Mr. Mahabaleshwara. Talking about digital enablers, I come back to you, Mr. Ramann. I think SIDBI, has been a pioneer of many enablers for banks. Can you describe, sir, one of the initiatives that SIDBI is thinking about as GST Sahay? How that can be a game changer for MSME financing.
So I think GST Sahay is something which really is the implementation or operationalization of OCEN. Now, I think everybody in the room is probably familiar with the OCEN concept, and it therefore is, if you ask me, the first and biggest use case of the account aggregator. And with GST now coming on to the account aggregator, there are still a few hiccups, but I think that will get sorted. What is really happening is that the account aggregator, which is itself an ecosystem, so anybody who's signed into the AA system will automatically get signed into the GST Sahay system. And an invoice of an MSME, and typically we're looking at the smaller, units. The invoice would come from the GST, the same account aggregator would pick up the data from the bank statements. This data would be shared on a marketplace platform where potential lenders would be waiting for the information. So a lender would end up getting the invoice information, the GST, and the bank statement of that entity. And this would then go through their individual and respective rule engines, and then they would throw up an offer. So, of course, it's an ideal world. You can expect that an invoice of 30,000 rupees might get 4 offers for, discounting. Now, that's really, how it is envisaged. It's been tried and tested. We have already done it with our own SIDBI customers. We've done about 40 to 50 cases. There are some hitches because it's an end-to-end journey. So from the underwriting to the e-natch and then, payment into an account. So this is really how it is flowing. Several of the other banks have also been involved in this. It's all about, writing APIs in order to link into the GST Sahay system. And all important is the fact that there's an invoice registry. So the dedupe of an invoice will need to be done. So an invoice that comes into the registry should therefore get financed only once, and then, there is an automatic, sort of flag that goes saying it's already been financed. So, the GST Sahay is something which is purported to target the unsecured or the lack of unsecured lending in the country. And that is really why it's being, targeted, and it's aimed to take care of the MSME segment, both when the MSME is a vendor and therefore, is the owner of the invoice. Equally, when the MSME buys his, sort of daily or weekly requirements from a larger player, that also would then fall within this. So, as everyone around has very nicely described, that it's about triangulation of that data. And, that is really what we're all talking about. And therefore, the only hope is that with formalization, there will be more and more MSMEs being forced into the GST system. And the GST system therefore becomes some sort of, a sort of backbone to, giving a lender a real-time insight into the health of a company. So, you put together the GST, the income tax data, and the bank statement, and I don't think you really need anything more than that. In fact, I'll just take a step ahead and just inform. I don't think it's something which too many people are aware of. We have shared it with a couple of banks, but given the fact that the commercial bureaus are now, getting more excited, we're all using them for what may be known typically in the civil nomenclature is known as a CMR score. And when you take the probability of default from that, you take it along with what we have created with the help of CIBIL and online OPL, that is the online public sector platform. So we've created a triangulation of these 3 data points and called it FIT. So you have the CIBILs, the CMR score and the FIT score, and put the 2 together. Each has a probability of default, and I don't think a lender really needs to look beyond that when you're typically talking small ticket loans. So hopefully that's the way the future will look.
Thank you, Mr. Ramann. A lot of positive, encouraging signs that are all coming together. I can keep going on in terms of questions to the panel, but I'm also a little conscious of time. So I want to just open up. If there are questions in the audience, I can see a hand. Please, if you can take a mic and ask a question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful panel and the discussion. Ramann, Mr. Ramann, you talked about GST Sahai. A lot of those features are available in TREDS, already. Why can't we bring GST integration with TREDS and, or when that can happen and we'll have that UPI movement for TREDS? And, Sundeep, please do join afterwards.
No, it's a great point. So I think it's just a matter of how the regulations are written. So if we can change the regulations, frankly, what GST Sahai is doing could happen in a TREDS platform. So TREDS today is unfortunately predicated upon the buyer coming in and accepting the invoice. Now, GST Sahai is simply bill discounting, or what we're calling as invoice financing. So, if that were to be allowed within the current, or the current regulations of TREDS could be tweaked and that particular window can be brought in, absolutely, that's the same. In fact, on the invoice registry, we have ourselves created a link with the invoice registry held by the TREDS. Because, finally the 2 systems need to talk to each other.
Also, there's a question here for both Mr. Mahabaleshwara and Srikanth. In the context of the question asked by Mr. Mahabaleshwara in terms of, the collections and monitoring, while the customer has benefited from the consent that he's offering to Srikanth for the purpose of availing credit, why can't the bank also be having the right to monitor the account using the aggregator without the consent when the account is stressed especially?
I think you have clean bowled me. See, nowadays what is happening is, without the consent of the customer, if we start doing that, it is encroaching, as good as encroaching it into his private privacy or something like that. So that is why when we talked about the digital journey and all, you might have experienced that it is all with his consent. Even if you want to access to his transaction data, it has to happen with his consent. So that consent form it would always remain. In fact, today morning I was discussing with the RBI officials regarding one of the RTI Act. There also this sort of consent from the connected people. It is also very much not that essentially it is not there, but indirectly we have to take care of all that things. But the point in referring to the monitoring was that as such, we have lot of manpower being wasted in manual monitoring of the accounts. So if that could be replaced with appropriate digital solution, this potential is unlimited. To quote my own example, when I was doing home loans manual sanction, there was about 100 officers, credit officers team which was processing it. Now everything is being done with less than 10 people. That is the potential that we have. Monitoring we cannot ignore, because future the credit quality of the portfolio is definitely the delinquency related things we have to take care. And that is where I felt that there is an immense need for that. Whether it is with his consent or we are having our own digital tool, let the ecosystem people address that issue. I have put forth my demand as a banker. I'm sure that they will come out with appropriate solution.
Thank you, sir. That's a good lead up to actually making my answer and job easier. I think there are two parts to this answer. One is a banker's view in terms of reducing the cost of doing business through either effort or bad loans. That is a perfectly legitimate use of data. However, if you look at it more from a rights and a consumer rights and a data principles rights, see, one of the things that I personally worry about is that, with great amounts of data comes great amounts of responsibility, right? And very soon, hopefully, we will have a very strong data protection regime. FICCI is doing some terrific work in engaging with the policymakers. Once the data protection regime comes in, institutions like banks and any institution that deals with data will need to prove informed consent from the data principle, whether it is at the point of origination or on whatever the use case, right? If there is a miss in that, the potential, business or regulatory or even reputational costs can be quite high. So while yes, you could argue that there is a contract between a lender and a borrower, therefore the lender should have rights on data, I think there is a higher order requirement here to be very, very sensitive and responsible with the data that you get. It's a trade-off. Ultimately, it's a trade-off.
Sorry, but let me just come in. I mean, I'm also, I wonder, because in the original account aggregator framework, the consent could be for any period of time. So my understanding of your question is that it already exists. So if I give a loan, I can take a consent upfront for the entire duration of the loan. And I have rights to monitor the account right through. So unless the account aggregator rules have changed, but I thought that's how it worked.
No, actually, you're right, sir. The specifications do provide for what is called repeated consent. You can fetch data every month or every X days. It's configurable. But your specific question was, why can't the bank monitor my account without consent? And that's where I kind of had an allergy.
Yeah,
I think there's a question right behind
you, just like the PAN has evolved into, the sort of KYC default for a personal or a consumer loan for an individual, how do you see, for an MSME, which can be technically a body corporate, an LLP, a partnership, or a proprietorship, right? What will be the single sort of KYC identifier evolving? And I mean, there is a precedent in terms of a paper by Bank of International Settlements which says that it should evolve into a legal entity identifier. And it quotes account aggregator, very, very liberally. So does anybody have a view?
I'd love you to jump in, sir, but I think there are two parallel questions you asked in one. One is, what's the single irrefutable identity? And the second is, what is the strong mechanism of consent? Today, the way the AA framework has developed is, as long as that financial instrument, maybe it's a bank account or a mutual fund, is held by one individual and that individual provides measurable or auditable consent, we're good. Complication in a body corporate or even a partnership firm is where there are more than one people controlling a financial asset. Then what is the mechanism of consent? It's an unsolved problem. Forget in A, it's even in UPI, I believe it's not a solved problem. There is how do you authenticate in a joint or a listing account? So I think the way we are looking at it, and this is feedback, I mean, we all learn from our customers. The feedback that we're getting is there is a big enough market to address with sole proprietors, where consent and ownership is not disputable, right? If we solve it for that, eventually I think technology and regulations will catch up and solve the authentication problem. So it's not a regulation problem, it's not a technology problem, it's more of what is the mechanism of consent for where there are two or more parties involved?
Yeah, as a precedent, they have quoted way back in 1973 when SWIFT was formed, how they got the bank identifier code for 6,500 banks. So they've said that utilize that framework to, get this.
I'd love to understand more. I'll catch up with you offline.
So you should look it up.
Yeah, but just to add to that point, I think the ask of the banking system from the account aggregator and in turn from the, this is actually the Department of Revenue, is that allow for the KYC that is there within that regulated entity to be picked up in the account aggregator journey itself, which is really, if you ask me, the best KYC. So every regulated entity is supposed to do the same KYC. So that is certainly a solution.
Yeah, there's another question there, right behind.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vipul Mahajan. First of all, thanks for such an insightful session. My question is more around from the management topic of OB, organization behavior. Right? MSME has been such a hard, manual underwriting, traditional way of, credit, right? It's a credit culture that has to change for all the digital innovations that we all spoke about for them to truly get that traction that it needs, right? And from your perspective, that how do we, establish that credit culture change? The credit policies are so hardwired in the manual underwriting way. The people doing the credit underwriting are so hardwired, right? How do we make that change and transformation towards that journey that digital truly gets its grip on the ground from an MSME credit perspective?
I think when Ruchin provided those early information, all of us have seen that. What is the percentage of the MSMEs they have access to the formal credit? And what I have seen is correct, around more than 34% are even now accessing to the informal credit.
So 2/3 are informal.
Yeah.
Only 1/3 is.
See, that there itself is the challenge. The reason is that I also made it a reference in my opening remarks. Our credit underwriting to the MSMEs, it is still in the evolution stage. So we even now, as a typical banker, we look at the balance sheet related sort of underwriting. That no more holds good. Because an MSME, which has no credit score at all, if you take the CIBIL report and all, it may give you the negative score. Because he doesn't have a recorded credit history. So in such cases, I should have a tool wherein I should also fetch the informal data. See, formal data, whatever all that enabler we spoke, it is available. But there are certain informal data also in the society. Based on that, whether I am able to give the credit underwriting, that's where I said, we have to again differentiate. Maybe microcredit up to 10 lakhs or about 50. It all depends on my ability to take the risk. And that risk-taking ability should also be through the digital journey. That is where I said, the different type of solution is a must, and that flexibility you will get only through digital route, not through the manual underwriting. Anybody else?
And if I can just add, it's a journey. So credit, yes, it's hardwired and everything else, but what do you look when you do a traditional underwriting? You look at the banking statement, banking behavior, banking turnover. If all of that is available now on a digital platform, your confirmation in terms of the turnover, the GST is providing you that, the KYC or whatever, the Udyam, all of this is available online. And then you build your own scorecard depending on the transactional history of the customer. And once you have much more data available for these customers, you will build a scorecard for these guys. So it's a journey. It's not, you're right. It's culturally, and also it's about you build all this digital underwriting and all up to, let's say, a 5 lakh to start with. Once you are comfortable, you take it to 10 lakhs, then 50 lakhs. It depends on how the performance of that portfolio is, and that really will keep increasing the risk appetite of a lender or a banker. And that will, so it's a journey.
I think on the lighter side, just to comment, I'll come to your question in a minute. It is like when AI was just first coming in, they said a game of chess is so complex, right? A computer can never be the human being, and now, that question doesn't arise. So I think you're right. A lot of bankers will say, look, SME is so complex. that, only we can go and assess the risk, but time will say whether that's true or not. So you had a question, I think we are
Thank you.
exactly on time.
Only 2 points I wanted to make. As you said that MSME financing is a very challenging scenario. See, I think majority of the MSME are still in the unorganized sector, mostly proprietorship concern and traditional form of partnership firms. And that becomes a very challenging especially for digital lending as well. So there is an act, Enterprises Act, which covers all these type of organizations which are not organized or which semi-organized type of sector, which takes care of compliance part of all these type of unorganized sectors. So with the reach SIDBI has and influence SIDBI enjoys with the government, because SIDBI was instrumental in bringing in the Factoring Act, especially and MSME Act, the SIDBI can take up with the government, at least bring some similar type of legislation to cover these two segments. Traditional form of partnership is already an act, but proprietorship enterprise is still not covered under any of the act, and they are still governed by traditional customary law of the country. So, and second aspect of it is that when we are moving to digital financing, security creation is still a challenging aspect of it. Only recently, last month, MeitY came out with the notification allowing digital mortgage and creation security. But yesterday we were discussing that tokenization of the security, especially land, and movables, other security. But it required involvement of the various government and state government at different level. With the presence of SIDBI in the government, especially in MSME sector, whether we can take it forward, the digital creation of security will be much faster and lending will be much faster.
So I honestly don't think SIDBI is as powerful as you make it out to be. So, but my response to your first, the query that you made or the suggestion, my own belief is that the Udyam registration being a central registration or something that's done through a central, it's not an act as yet, but it's certainly an executive order of the central government. It will have a more unifying effect, and it's an easier way to operate rather than going to multiple states for doing something under respective state acts. So, something that can be done centrally, and therefore the dream is to have Udyam registration as a single registration for all business, and therefore you cut across all types of constitutions. So be it partnership or whatever it might be. So, that is really the way that it is also designed and thought through in MSME ministry too. And on the other point, I think it's entirely a state government subject. So with regard to, land and property, we just have to, hope that more SROs get digitized, which I'm told has been happening. So some of the states have gone ahead with that. And yes, I mean, all, amendment to all laws allowing for, digital signatures to apply as in the first schedule of the IT Act. I completely agree. That's good progress. So I think as a country, we're doing well.
All right. So I think, we're exactly on time. And, with that note, sir, I'll just conclude the session. The takeaway for me has been, that MSME is a very, very important segment. It's complex and challenging. A lot of positive enablers are coming in, sir. But as you reminded us at the very end, there are a lot of challenges as well. But, hopefully, one step at a time. By the time we come next year in FIBAC, we hope, all of us in the panel hope that, we have taken a significant step forward in addressing these challenges. Thank you, everyone.